today speaking about how do you communicate with confidence and clarity. Most of our communication actually isn't our words. It's our body language, our vocal production, our facial gestures, and a lot of the things that we're saying might be misinterpreted because of how we're saying that. And so today I'm going to give you some guidance in how to become more aware of your body language and your voice, and then how to shed some of the unnecessary interference so that you look and feel calm and confident in front of any audience. So today I'm going to just introduce myself a little bit and the modality that I teach. It's called the Alexander technique. Then we're going to actually talk a little bit about the impact of sitting. We're sitting too much and it's affecting everything that we're doing. And then what are some of our unconscious patterns in our posture? Things that we're doing that we don't even know that we're doing, but they're hurting us and they're making us look stressed and also feel unnerved. And then we'll talk about what is easy, confident body language and how this also affects our pain, our strain, and our injury. And then finally, what are some of the benefits of good posture? So I have been a certified Alexander technique teacher for almost 17 years. And when I studied at UCSD, I studied cognitive science with clinical applications and at the same time had a minor in dance. And today, with what I'm sharing with the world, it feels like the perfect combination of cog sci and dance. I'm teaching people to be more aware of how they move and how they breathe. And when I think about my time at UCSD and how it was such a foundation for what I'm doing now, I almost get a little emotional because it feels so important to what I'm offering now. I'm also an art of breathing teacher. I'm going to talk a lot today about breathing coordination, and our ideas of breathing are often very incorrect, and they're influencing how we look and how we feel. I offer private instruction, group classes, workshops, corporate trainings, and retreats. And some of the people that I have worked with, my private clients, have been on True Blood, Sons of Anarchy, Scandal, Weeds. I worked with a lot of actors up in LA. So this work also really helps with that confidence in auditions and in presentations for lawyers, doctors, actors, producers, directors, anyone who wants to have that confident look in front of whomever they're speaking to. Oops, excuse me. I knew I was going to do that. So the Alexander technique was developed by a man named F.M. Alexander. And he was a Shakespearean orator who chronically lost his voice. And the doctors would say, rest your voice. He would rest his voice, but as soon as he went back to speaking again, he would lose it. So he realized it was something that he was doing unconsciously and habitually that was interfering with his voice. And so he went through years of self-study to develop this technique. So some of the famous people that have used this technique are Madonna, Judi Dench, Kevin Kline, John Dewey, Aldous Huxley, and many, many, many other people besides that. So it's well known amongst the performance community. Not only have people used it for performance, but pain relief, posture, vocal quality, stress relief, and the powerful body language. So everyone take a moment right now and don't change what you're doing. But notice your body. And notice what shape you're sitting in right now. Notice where you might have a little tension, a little squeezing, a little holding. This pattern is unconscious. And this pattern of sitting is influencing not only how you're feeling in your body, your pain levels, but it's also influencing how you're breathing. And how you're breathing is influencing your vocal quality and also even digestion and nerve conduction and your breathing. So these are some things to notice right now. And then I want you to ask yourself, can I give myself a little space? Can you give yourself a little space? Can you give yourself a little space by leaning back into the back of the chair? So often when we think of posture, we think of sitting up straight. But if you sit up straight, often you're engaging too much musculature and you're making yourself rigid and fixed. And you can't really breathe that well. So who shifted back in their chair? Anybody? What felt different after you shifted back in your chair? Yeah, exactly. So as we go through today's talk, I want you to pay attention to your body and ask yourself, can I give myself some space? Because that's all we really need for more confident body language and posture, just a little bit more space for our diaphragms to move. On average, we are sitting 9.1 hours a day. This is horrible for us. So when you leave today and you're sitting somewhere, ask yourself, can I do this some other way other than sitting? What happens when we're sitting here, look at this image here of the skeleton. What happens when we're sitting too much is the head is forward of the spine, the neck is clenched, the ribs are compressed, the diaphragm can't move, and even the pelvis is collapsed under, so you have no foundation for your torso. F.M. Alexander said some really great quotes. One of the quotes here I have is, you can't do something you don't know if you keep on doing what you do know. This is something I appreciate about being at UCSD, is there's all this talk of innovation and how can we change, but we can even innovate how we're living in our bodies. We can change our habits. There is a doctor by the name of Norman Doidge. Has anyone heard of Norman Doidge? Oh, you have to look up his book. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. So in this book, he talks about neuroplasticity and gives a lot of clinical examples of people who went through drastic changes that allowed them to go from being suffering and debilitated to living really amazing lives. And so I feel like through this work, by paying more attention to your body, noticing habits of tension, collapse, and holding, that you can change habits of a lifetime. So now we're going to see what happens on the inside when you're sitting and slouching too much. What did this make you think of, like in your own life? Anybody? Good. Good. We want our necks to hurt when we think about this because that is accurate. This position where we collapse is painful for the neck. It should hurt. Just like we should also feel like we can't breathe in that position. Have any of you guys seen this? This was actually published, I think, in one of the main newspapers, where it was looking at the angle of the head relative to the rest of the spine and the pelvis and the legs. So if you look at these options here, which one are you? How are you looking at your phone? And how often are you looking at your phone in that position? What we're doing with our phones is translating into how we're sitting in meetings. It's translating to how we're sitting in our cars. And then it's translating to how we're moving and speaking and breathing in front of an audience. So I do this to purposely, hopefully, create a tiny bit of fear, a little bit of concern, like, what am I doing? So that we can bring the unconscious into consciousness. And when we're more conscious in our body, we can make better choices with how we sit, how we stand, how we breathe, how we speak, how we communicate with others. So what's really important here is that if you're looking at your phone with your head at a 60-degree angle, you're adding 60 pounds to your spine. That much pressure. And the muscles that are taking that aren't just the neck muscles. It's also going to be the abdominal wall, not in a good way. It's not good core workout. The low back muscles, the glutes, and the muscles of the thighs, everything is gripping and holding on for dear life so that you don't fall over. And it's funny, when I suggest to clients that they look at their phone like this, they're like, oh, I would never do that. So hopefully this creates a little inspiration to even question, like, how am I looking at my phone? What am I doing to my neck, to my lungs, to my ribs, to my back when I'm looking at my phone? And can you make choices that really support ease and restfulness in the body and support in the body so that when you get up in front of a big group, you're already ready to connect. You're already ready to communicate. So what is the solution? What's the solution you've all been told all your lives? Sit up straight, stand up straight. Everybody right now, either stand up straight or sit up straight. How awful do you feel right now? Everybody changes their head and shakes their head and they're like, ugh, this feels terrible. It's not the solution. Sitting up straight is not the solution. There's actually a book. If you want the title, I will have to look it up for you because I don't have it at the top of my head. But it's all about the origination of the idea of good posture. And good posture was invented for discipline and creating order. So that's why we have military posture. And when you stand up or sit up straight, you're actually compressing your low back, you're locking your legs, you're tightening your neck, and you cannot breathe when you stand up straight or sit up straight. So the solution is not to stand up straight. And the misconception that a lot of people have is, I'm just lazy, and that's why I can't sit up straight. And it's not true. You're not lazy. Stand up straight doesn't work. Isn't that a relief for everybody? And I show a picture of F.M. Alexander. So he was teaching his work in the early 1900s, and he if you look at pictures of him, he's so, even though he's intense, there's all of this length and openness to him. So once again, I want you to scan your body. What do you notice? And don't fix anything right away, but you can notice, where's my head? What am I doing with my ribs? Where am I sitting in the chair? And can you give yourself more space? When you notice your body, you can make healthier choices in how you're sitting, standing, walking, speaking, moving, sitting in your car, looking at your phone. The one thing we really want to start to think about is a relationship of the head to the ribs to the pelvis. And when you're paying attention to this relationship of your head to your ribs to your pelvis, you can give yourself space for the room for your diaphragm, ribs, and lungs to move with your breath. We want space for breath. Here's another quote from F.M. Alexander. You see, the entire natural movement of the spine is upwards, of the head is upwards. But as soon as we pull our heads back, we frustrate that natural activity of movement upwards. So take a moment and let yourself indulge in a little slouch. And everyone's like, oh, thank you. As you indulge in that slouch, you can notice what happens to your head, that your head literally is getting pulled down in towards your spine. And then when you consider the release of the neck and the release of the head and the release of the spine in an upward direction, I'll often say, think of the back of your head as floating up towards the ceiling. It elongates the whole structure. You have more support, and you're right on top of your pelvis, as you can see in this image here of the skeleton. This length through the spine and the space in your torso actually impacts the movement of your diaphragm, your lungs, and your ribs. Breath is movement. And I often ask people, are you breathable? If you aren't breathable, you're going to feel tense and probably stiff and maybe even a little bit nervous. So I'm going to show you another video where you can see the actual movement, the floating action of the diaphragm. That's the one, yeah.
It gains its shape from its attachments and from the organs that surround it, especially the heart, lungs, and liver. The diaphragm attaches at the costals along the lower rib cage, high in the front of the sternum, and deeply in the back along the spine. The diaphragm also attaches to itself via a central tendon, making the diaphragm one of the unique muscles of the body. The diaphragm uses its central tendon and its attachments as leverage to flatten during inhalation. The expansion of the ribs comes from the resistance of the internal organs to downward movement. As the internal organs are slow to move, the ribs expand to make room for the lungs.
This is my favorite view of the diaphragm.
Of the ribs,
You're looking at it from underneath.
Reaches that low in the body. As seen from below, we get a sense of the full range of motion of the diaphragm as it would glide over the aorta, the vena cava, the esophagus, and the internal organs. For more information, visit www.
What did you see in that video? Movement. Yes, a lot of movement. Was anyone surprised by the diaphragm? Yeah, the diaphragm rises and falls. Was anyone surprised about the size of the diaphragm? Yeah, your diaphragm is huge. Your diaphragm is not this little flat thing right here. Your diaphragm is bowl-shaped, and it moves like a parachute or like a jellyfish. So I'm going to have all of you take your hands. I have to put the mic down for a moment. You're going to make this shape. It's a dome shape. It's a bowl shape. And then you're going to let this bowl shape flatten. And then you're going to let the bowl shape float back up. And then you're going to let the bowl shape flatten. Notice that your elbows go wide when you flatten. And then you let the bowl shape float up again. And then the bowl shape flattens slowly, not quickly. And then it floats back up again. It domes back up. This is the movement of your diaphragm. And now I want you to take your fingertips and find the ridge of your ribs. So we have ridge of rib in the front here, but if you continue to follow the ridge of your ribs and all the way around and all the way around and all the way around and all the way around, you find that the ridge of the ribs goes all the way to your back. Did you know that your diaphragm is connected to your spine? Your diaphragm is connected to your spine. So as your body, as demands change, like you're going to speak in front of a group, you're going to lead a board meeting, you're going to do a pitch, your diaphragm needs to have this floating action. It floats down to bring air in, and it floats up to send the air out. Many people think it's the other way around. They think that this is what the diaphragm is doing. This, everyone take a gasp. This is called accessory breathing. It's using the neck and the shoulders and the chest muscles to try and force air into the body. And it will actually make you nervous. So if someone ever says to you, oh, just take a deep breath, don't listen to them. In a context when maybe you're feeling a little nervous and someone's like, oh, just relax, take a deep breath. I have a big problem with someone telling someone else, just relax, take a deep breath, because it usually leads to accessory breathing. Instead, let breath out. When you let breath out, and the sound that we use in Alexander technique is called a whispered ah. And when you let breath out, this is happening. The diaphragm is releasing. The ribs are releasing. The intercostal muscles are releasing. You are lowering the pressure inside of your torso. So when you let breath out with a whispered ah, you're also releasing the mouth, the lips, the tongue, and the jaw, and you feel calmer. Anybody notice a difference when they just let breath out right now? What did you notice? I heard it, What changed in your body? Mm-hmm. When you let breath out like that, you slow your breath rate, which slows your heart rate, which calms your nervous system. What's also happening is your diaphragm is now massaging your internal organs. On your left side is your stomach, and it touches your diaphragm. And on the right side is your liver, and it's touching your diaphragm. And just above the diaphragm is the lungs and the heart. So this floating action of the diaphragm is massaging your internal organs, relieving you of all of this. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. You'll also start to take up more space in your body as well. So I want you to think about your diaphragm, wonder about your diaphragm. Consider that most of your diaphragm is actually in your back, not in your front. Most of your diaphragm is back here in your back. If you're writing something down, please write this down. Your back breathes. Your back breathes. Your back, from armpit to armpit, is filled with lungs. That's why the doctor listens to your heart in your back and listens to your breathing in your back. Most of your lungs in your back. So when you think, oh, my back breathes, it really changes the amount of space that you take up. And it changes the ease with which the air can leave and enter the body. Your spine is not straight. How many of you have ever thought, oh, I need to straighten my spine? Your spine is not straight. And in fact, your spine is more snake-like than anything else. And if you look at the spine here, what does this look like this is designed to do? Oh, yes. Absorb impact. What else? Be flexible. Definitely. What else? I'm walking this way and someone calls my name, I get to change directions. Our spine is a moving column. It is not straight. It never was straight. You do not want a straight spine. And what I'll have you think about instead, though, is that your spine, you can lengthen along the curves of your spine. So there are curves of the spine. Instead of thinking straight spine, you're thinking this. Like wind going up your spine. Your spine releases along the curves instead of trying to straighten. How does this feel different in your body? It's flexible, not rigid. You can breathe. You're not stuck in a new straitjacket. So the collapse is like a form of a straitjacket. And then you try to stand up straight and you try to hold your spine straight, and then it gets tired and you go back to slouching. You're like, I'm so lazy. We do not want a new straitjacket. Actually, when we let our spines have length along the curves, it's so much easier to move, to breathe, to speak. And a slight side note, if you feel like you have to yawn, I invite you to yawn loud and proud. Because yawning is this giant holistic movement of the diaphragm that really eliminates old air and brings in fresh, energizing, calming oxygen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yawning is so good for us. So I give you permission here to yawn. So I have a couple examples of some of my clients. So this is Robert, and Robert is an actor up in Los Angeles. And here, this is a demonstration of our power stance. So I know Amy Cuddy. Have you heard that name, Amy Cuddy? She's at Harvard Business, and she did a TED Talk on body language and posture. And she described the Wonder Woman pose. And in the Wonder Woman pose, you put your hands on your fists, and then people would go into interviews after doing the Wonder Woman pose, and they would feel more confident. And the other pose she talks about is laying back in your chair with your arms up like this. Like there was a very victorious body language. And then they would go into their interviews, and they felt more confident. I have a theory about this. I don't know how to study it. If someone knows how I can study this, let me know. The reason they feel more confident here and here is because now their arms are not squeezing down on the lungs, the ribs, and the diaphragm, and they can breathe. If you can breathe, if you have the space for breath, you will feel more confident, calmer. You'll take up more space. Notice your body right now. And I'm just going to have you shift your weight back to the back of the chair, and you're going to uncross your legs. And I know for many of us, for women, we're always told, like, cross your legs. You're going to widen your stance, more like frontier women. We're going to have that wide stance. You're letting your weight come back. You're widening your stance. So this is a bit of a power stance here in sitting, where you're not compressing the lungs, the ribs, the diaphragm. You're not compressing the spine. and you're letting yourself take up space. If any of you want to come up to standing, we can also look at this right now. Anyone want to come to standing right now? Come on up. Come stand. Yeah. In a group like this where we maybe don't know each other, it's so tempting to cross our hands, cross our legs, and drop our head down. But that's not what this talk is about. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your feet about hips width distance. And then you're going to let breath out. As you let breath out, notice that your shoulder blades in the back can slide down your back. If you have your hands in your pockets or at the front of you, see if you can let them rest dangling down. If you don't want to, that's fine too. And notice here with this broader stance, that way down here, the ridge of your ribs where your diaphragm is, can move right now. You all look so different. Just from a moment ago, look at each other right now. You look so different. And then there's a plumb line here when you let go of shrinking yourself and you let yourself rest on your legs. Your legs are the support system for your spine. Your spine is self-supporting. It has support from the pelvis and the legs. The spine naturally goes up, so you don't have to stand up straight. The legs and the pelvis are like a shelf, and then the spine can naturally have that upward mobility. Your ribs, notice your ribs, that they're not compressed. You look so different right now. Go ahead and grab a seat. Thank you, guys. So this is another one of my clients. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people, most people, in size. I haven't. I mean, I'm still the same height. But I know a lot of people, including my wife, who has. What bearing does that have on your spine when you shrink?
I think a lot of that shrinking can stop. What I see happen when I have clients in their 80s that come to me. And they walk in like this. Yeah. I mean, I would say with a heightened body awareness, and instead of thinking about standing up straight and using all the muscling to hold themselves up, as they start to release the compression in the neck and release all the holding of the body up, there's less downward pull. And even the discs in between the vertebrae get more fluid in them just with a little bit of time laying on your back with your knees up. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. But I've seen so many people go from a compressed state to a lengthened state through this awareness and learning how to let go of unconscious, unnecessary tension. So this gentleman, he's a teacher and also a debate coach. And when he first came to me, he was really sort of pulled forward and down. And so the directions we talk about are letting the neck be free. When you let go of your neck, and probably most of you right now are going to notice, oh, I have some holding in my neck. Our holding in our neck is quite chronic. And because of how we're looking at our phones and how we're looking at our computers and how we're sitting in our chairs and driving in our cars, we stop noticing the compression in our neck. So in allowing the neck to be free, letting go of the neck, that already lets the spine lengthen and the back to widen. And instead of locking the legs and locking the knees, letting the knees have a little release forward. It will feel unusual at first, and there'll be far more mobility in your legs, but that loose stance is so much easier when you're in front of a group, when you're having to work for hours and hours and hours, when you're having to do a lot of research. That ease in the body is so much easier for your energy, for your mood, for how you're digesting food, how you're breathing. All right. So here, this is one of my clients who is a singer-songwriter up in LA. And so here we really get to see a sitting posture that isn't sitting up straight, but is also not collapsed. I hope you're starting to see a theme here, where the head is resting over the pelvis, and the ribs are also resting over the pelvis. There's a resting state balance of the body and of the skeleton. This is not how we think about our posture. We think good posture is hard work, and I'm too lazy to do it. I mean, with all of my clients, it's like, I am lazy, I can't do this. But when you have a sense of the resting state posture that you can let go in your neck and shoulders, you can let your jaw release. You can let go of your abdominal wall. You don't have to suck it in. You already have more support through the pelvis, more support through the lower torso. Do you guys feel those two bones in the chair right now? There are two bones on the chair. Anyone know what those two bones are called? Yes, our sits bones. They are literally called the sits bones. It's the bottom of the pelvis, and it's shaped like rockers. So our sits bones are not two pegs or like two logs that we sit on and then we can't move. Those sits bones are rounded, and they create a lot of flexibility and support from underneath. So when you're sitting in a meeting, notice your sits bones on the chair. That's already going to bring you into more of a supported state when you're sitting. So here, thank you. So here I have how we can look at reading our book, our phone, our computer. Maybe in this community there's more book reading being done, but a lot of people are not reading books anymore. So you can notice the difference with my client's head going forward and down to look at the book, and then how much more support he has with his head over his ribs and his ribs over his pelvis. What do you notice in his shoulders here? Yeah, he's not hunched forward. You might see that his shoulders are down. There's room for him to breathe. There's room for the lungs and the diaphragm and the ribs to move with his breath. We talk a lot about, what do I need to do? What do I need to strengthen? And I want to open up the possibility of maybe you don't need to strengthen something. Maybe it's letting go of your jaw. Maybe it's letting your hand open instead of clenching your hand. Maybe it's even letting the abdominal wall release. You might not need to strengthen your core as much as you think. If you start to let go of the unnecessary holding and compression, that's bringing your spine down. So here's one of my clients. She's a comedian. She does a hilarious squirrel imitation. If you look up Betsy Salkind, she's hilarious. And here we got an image of her driving in the car. So how familiar does this look? And how many of you sit like this in the car? Do you study Alexander technique? Excellent. So what's common? So I also have a client who's a lung surgeon, a jazz guitarist, and stress has all of us doing this. The neck tightens, pulls the head forward and down, pulls the ribs down where you cannot breathe. And it requires body awareness and a new paradigm. So not a paradigm of strengthening and pulling and holding and forcing, but a paradigm of release. What can you let go of that allows the spine to naturally go up and allows your body to come to its natural support system? So I always like to throw this in because I think our world could really benefit from a more mobile culture where we're moving even in business meetings. And this is called Constructive Rest and Alexander technique. Please take a photo of this. It's also called semi-supine. And in semi-supine, with your knees up and about hips width distance, it supports the release and lengthening of your spine. And when I have clients that are going on sales calls, or I have clients that are going to court, I ask them to do this before they get in their car and go to their meeting, go to their court, go to give their sales pitch. This is such a beneficial practice, and everyone says, oh, I'm not doing anything. But that's the point. We're doing too much in our bodies, and we're squeezing and compressing and tightening, and this activity really gives you an opportunity to notice consciously, squeezing and holding, and then allows you to release it. So what are you already noticing in your body right now? What benefits, just from a few of the things I've suggested, what are some benefits that you're noticing right now? Yeah. Yeah. I've ruined you. I've ruined you. You know, though my approach to any of those things are try it. And if you feel like this is wonderful for me, great. But it doesn't change what your brain is telling your body. Your brain is going to keep telling you to do the unconscious habitual thing. But I love that you're just noticing and thinking more like, do I need to sit like this? Can I give myself more space? Any other benefits that you're noticing just from a 30-minute talk? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When you're able to make conscious choices, you can let go of your shoulders. You can let your jaw release so that you are more present. And when you're up here in front of a group, that is so beneficial. We have mirror neurons, and you guys are mirroring me right now. And so if I start to get nervous and I start to squeeze in my ribs here, you start to feel uncomfortable. But when I notice it and I let my breath out and I let my shoulders soften, that has an impact on how you're feeling in your body as well. I do have an article called How to Relax at a Pitch Meeting that was published in the Huffington Post. If you want it, you can give me your card and I can send it to you. And then this is from the American Journal of Pain Management in 1994. 1994. And it's talking about how our posture is affecting everything, even our homeostasis and autonomic regulation. Our posture is affecting everything. And I don't believe the posture conversation has gotten more sophisticated since then. Everybody is still thinking sit up straight and squeeze and tighten and hold and strengthen the core. It's way more sophisticated and refined than that. So I bring it to this community, like how can we think in a more sophisticated way when we're considering how we're living in our own bodies? What are some changes you want to incorporate? One thing. What's one thing you want to take with you today? Let, and I like the word let. Let breath out. So you don't even have to be forceful with the out breath. If you let it out, that already triggers the whole mechanism to work for you and breathe better than you can. Anything else? Something you want to take with you today? Take a power stance before I'm about to go and speak in front of a group. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this big ordeal. It's very simple. A wider stance and not having your arms squeeze in towards your ribs is going to change how you feel, how you're breathing, and how your voice sounds. Yeah. Yes. And not from a punitive point of view. We're very punitive with ourselves when we think about our bodies. Like, I'm doing it wrong. I need to fix it. I like to think of like being generous with your body. I'm going to give my body more space in order to feel confident. Great. Yes.
These are an example where they let you recline, which it kind of feels good, but I'm wondering if it encourages some bad posture.
Most likely, if you're not paying attention to your body, habit's going to take over. You can sit in these chairs with a sense of awareness, and you can even lean back in the chair and think, oh, my spine is lengthening along the curves, but it's this way now instead of this way. And then also in these chairs, thinking of the width of the torso can be very beneficial. And then, like, what's appropriate with the activity? If you're getting ready to stand up and get in front of a group, you want to be more forward in the chair, ready for action. But if you're sitting with friends and you're relaxing and having dinner, that lean back is a little bit more appropriate for that activity. Great. Uh-huh.
The question was about the hips.
Uh-huh.
Like when you are standing, and sometimes there's a tendency that they naturally roll back, and then there's a tendency to overcorrect and roll them under. Like, where is the right way to be aligned?
I would say with a slightly broader stance, the pelvis will be more natural, and so that it's more up and down, but there is mobility in the pelvis. And if you're not holding your breath and you let breath out, that will allow the pelvis to sort of come into its natural balance. But also this idea of the head leading the spine up will reorganize the head, the spine, and the pelvis together. If you have more questions, I'm here. I think we're out of time. And I'm just so happy that you all came today. Thank you so much.